Hi, I'm Ryan Szimanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial.
Hi, I'm Shane Stevenson, director of museum collections and curator here at the Buffalo Naval Park.
Today, we're at the Buffalo Naval Park. We're on the USS Little Rock, looking at USS The Sullivans.
Yeah.
How long have you been here with the museum?
Oh, sure. Ryan, I've been here for about 5 years. I was hired in 2018 to kind of catalog the artifacts, 2D and 3D artifacts, and then as the ships themselves are artifacts, then to kind of catalog the historical fabric, changes over time, configurations, and of course then focusing on the history of the ships as well.
And how many macro artifacts do you guys have here at the Buffalo Naval Park?
Yeah, we actually have quite a bit. We have a very diverse artifact collection here. In addition to the Little Rock and Sullivans, we do have USS Croker, our submarine. In our yard, we have a Fury jet. We've got a Voodoo jet, our PTF-17, which served in Vietnam. And I tell you, when I was looking that up, she is like a forest. We were talking about the the hull last night, and she's got pine and ash and mahogany in the garboards, the keel, the framing. So she has a lot of different wood in her. So there's a lot to see.
And I've also seen a Huey, and what was the aircraft in the building?
Oh, the aircraft in the building is the P-39 era Cobra. About 13,000 of those were constructed here in Buffalo at the Bell Aircraft Plant. In addition, we also made about 14,000 P-40 Warhawks because we also were the headquarters of the Curtiss-Wright Corporation and then Bell Aircraft too.
I was wondering what the connection was between some of the aircraft you have and just having them here.
Yeah, interesting. Well, the Voodoo was attached to the Niagara Falls Air Force Base. So she actually was part of the squadron, the Electric Chicken Squadron here. She last flew in 1982 over the Naval Park. They took some photos, and then they put her on a barge and brought her here that same day in '82.
So we spent the night on board last night. We came up specifically to see the chaff launchers that you have that we had taken off at some point in our career, but we also wanted to hear a little bit about the Sullivans and what happened last April and the work that you've been doing to bring her back up to standards.
Sure. So it's a long process, and there was a lot of moving parts. So working with the Unified Command that we did, which was a collection of six or seven entities, being led by the Coast Guard. They did a pumping plan. There was about 1.2 million gallons of water and also about 40,000 gallons of oil.
Which you guys had been told had been cleaned up earlier in the ship's career, right? That was a surprise.
Yes, that was a little bit of a surprise. We do have some records in our collection saying that they were stung at some point in the 2000s. So that was a little bit of a surprise, as you had said. So getting all of that pumped out, then my job was to get in there, get all those artifacts and donations and things that had been put on display.
Well, let's start with the beginning. What do we think happened to the ship?
Sure, thank you. I know there's been a lot of talk. You did a really great video in support of us last year, talking a little bit about what you had seen and why museum ships kind of go through this stuff. So we are prone to seiches. Now, Lake Erie is known throughout the world, and we're at the eastern end of Lake Erie, and it's known throughout the world as being a really rough spot for seiches, which is a high wind event then that, like a bathtub, pushes all of the water from west to east. All right, because the lake is almost exactly like the wind pattern. And so we rose about 6, 7, or 8 feet, which we do 4 or 5 times a year. But when the water rushed out, we think she hit the bottom, and that created about a 4 or 5 foot gash along the strakes there, about 2 feet below the water line. And what we found was that brought in about 3,000 gallons of water a minute.
Interesting. It's something that could have happened to any ship, not a seiche so much, but New Jersey's own berth is backfilling in with mud. It was originally 40 feet. It's not anymore. Oh. Intrepid got into some trouble when she was last towed to dry dock because her berth had filled in with mud and they couldn't get her out. Midway, they're removing the propellers and rudders because she keeps hitting on that and it's transmitting that force into the hull.
Yes.
And what sounds like a very similar way to what damaged you. So amazes me here is not that it happened, but that the Sullivans was the first one that it happened to. It could have been almost any one of our ships.
When you give that list like that, it's unfortunate that it's us, and of course the story of the five brothers is so important to us in telling that story, and of course the Sullivan family in Waterloo, Iowa. It's so important for them. So, but we said this is the time to show our mettle now. We can't look at what's past. We can't look at the last 45 years. What we can do is we can show what we are worth now. And I think we're continuing to do that. Even though it was more than a year ago, we're still working every day to make sure she's preserved, floating, and then working on the restoration through a dry dock process.
Oh my goodness, and the fact that a year later, the ship is open to the public. You guys can probably see on film that there are people taking the tour of the ship behind us here.
Yeah.
I can't believe that you've managed to get her even to that point. Like, obviously, there's a lot of work to go.
There is. You're right, but it was important for us to have it open. Right when it happened and shortly afterward in the season of 22, it was just crossing over, and then people would just come onto the Little Rock and go onto the Croaker. But as we talked about it in the off-season, we had said, now we got to get people, hearing the story and walking through the spaces and seeing what life was aboard like on one of these small boys.
And I think you've been very successful with that so far. And you have plans for the next stage of restoring the ship and really strengthening the hull from here. How do you plan on going about that?
Yeah, well, we received a nice amount of money from the federal government through our Senator Schumer, and we also received a nice sum of money from New York State. And that money is being transferred to the city of Buffalo, who owns the vessels. We are still probably $1 million short, $1.5 million short of our ultimate goal. But we've looked at dry docks in Erie, Toledo, and then also in Canada. And so we're trying to negotiate with at least Erie, Pennsylvania, where the cod went, and Don John, and the Canadian dry dock as well. Toledo, that would be about a 60-hour tug. Ooh. We don't want to do that.
It's already got hauled.
Right, yes, that would not be good. You're right, absolutely. Erie would be about 20 hours. Canada is about 5. So we're trying to build the case that we should go to Canada, but we're negotiating with the federal government and the state governments to say, can this money be used? These are the benefits. It's not that long tow, as it would be to Erie. So there's 1,000 moving parts, and so we just got to get everything, all the gears in alignment here.
Yeah, and I know the cod had a great time at Don John Shipyard. They were really happy with the service they got there, and we're heading there next after we leave here. But yeah, the 20 hours is still a long tow for an artifact in this condition. 80 years old.
Yeah, it is. It's really, we're very proud that she's been here for as many years as she has in Buffalo, and she had a very storied career for the 23 years that she was in service, 22 years that she was in service. So we got to continue to tell the story of the Sullivans, and we are putting a winter plan in place. So we had a winter emergency plan for last winter, and we're preparing one just in case she doesn't get to dry dock this year. We're preparing another winter one. This one will include flooding alarms, which we did not have last year, more dehumidifiers, more heaters, more bubblers. And so we're putting together a package to really kind of build that shell around the ship.
And that's only if you're not able to get yard availability before then.
Correct. But we are preparing it now, just
exactly.
In case,
Exactly. So speaking of some of the work that you have to do while you're still here, what was the initial work you did? You came in the morning, the ship had partially sunk. You've got 8 agencies now showing up at your doorstep. What sort of stuff did you have to do to get her back to the condition she's in now?
Well, the first thing that the Unified Command did was to make sure the ship wasn't moving anymore. So not only did we have the Seiche, lifted her up, knocked her on the ground, and then, of course, because where she's nested, we're very close to the start of the riverbed, right? Okay. So she kind of slid down We had a secondary station about 8:30 in the morning that day, lifted her back up, and then slid her farther down the riverbed at that 35-degree angle. And so we needed to make sure that if we were going to put anyone in the water, that she wasn't going to raise and slide down even more. So they kind of tested some areas, made sure, they got some divers real quickly in the water to see where she was in the riverbed. And then once they did that, they started going through and methodically patching. They went frame by frame, started patching some holes that we had. They identified that 4 or 5 foot gash on starboard, which started the whole event. And that was kind of one of the first things that they did. Of course, analysis of the damage control books, blueprints. They really needed to see every little inch.
So these archival materials that you had in your possession were able to come in handy with a project like this.
Thank you. Yeah, that was, and I said, hey, Paul, to the president and CEO, I said, this is what archives is good for, right? I'm supplying the team with archival blueprints and information.
And you had said before you were hired 5 years ago, there wasn't really a curator doing that sort of work.
Correct. There hadn't been a curator here for about 21 years. So you can just imagine what was donated. Things were just scattered all across all 3 of our vessels. It's been a lot of work.
So just the fraction of the collection you've been able to catalog in the first 4 years you were here was enough to help recover from this major disaster.
Well, you parse it out. At least I did. I said, okay, every collection that I find about the 3 ships, the 3 vessels, has got to be processed first, because that's the most important thing. And then you work into personal collections and things like that. But I wanted to focus on the 3 vessels that we have here first.
Sounds like that paid dividends.
Thank you.
So you find, I've patched relatively small holes where you sandwich something through. What do you do for a 5-foot-long...
That was unique, and I did not know that either, that this could be done. But they built a box, and they poured concrete in. So I don't know how they did it on the outside, but when you go down to it's in the forward engine room, when you go down there, you will see the box and the cement. Okay,
so they more or less pumped out as much as they could, got the water out.
Yes.
And then they built a box and poured cement into it. And that's a temporary patch.
Yes,
obviously, welding a plate or cropping out. Yeah.
Of course. So we monitor that concrete because, it's in moisture. Yeah. We're checking for cracks and things like that. Not daily, but probably weekly, that someone goes down there and makes sure that it's still a solid piece of concrete. So, and then that will be removed at dry dock, and of course, then they'll replate.
It seems like a good, cheap solution to get you through a period of months or years to the point where you can do the permanent fix.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the underwater welding is very difficult, and that's assuming that you have good plate to weld onto. If it's paper thin...
that's very true. And can they analyze that down there? Now, what we think happened was there was some degradation already, but, that hitting of the bottom, there might have been a boulder or just a hard piece of mud, and then there's a boom, 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 boom right along that seam. So it was, that's what the Unified Command said would be the best thing, was to just concrete it, and then we can leave it temporarily, at most 2 years probably. So certainly dry docking is the most important thing to do.
All right, so you've got that money for dry docking. You need about $1 million more to do everything you need to. What's your scope of work when you do go into the yard?
I believe we will probably, I've heard, we've worked with Joe Lombardi, the naval surveyor, believes that about 60% underwater hull needs to be replaced. I don't have it broken down into more, if it could just go right on, or you need to cut and put back on a new plating, but that's the percentage that I've heard, is roughly about 60%. Certainly we'd like to maybe get the antennas, so there's some aesthetic things that everyone would like to tackle when they're in a dry dock, but of course obviously the hull is the big thing. Maybe doing some work on the inside, getting rid of some of that paint that's been peeling, that may have exposed some lead paint originally from the 40s through the 60s.
So obviously we know that dry docking a ship is important, and I know you guys aren't putting this off because you don't want to do it. Like, what are the things that have kept you from being able to dry dock the Sullivans over the last couple of years?
Yeah, the biggest thing is the money. Again, we've raised we've had given to us through federal and state funding about $8.5 million. That is working its way towards the Naval Park right now, and certainly yard availability. We started talking to Don John. We went down there prior to the COD's visit to begin discussions with them, and then while COD was there, we also met with them again, and we spoke to them earlier in this year, and they said, well, listen, our yard availability is we are filled for the rest of 23. So we have to, we accept that, which has then allowed us to start thinking of Canada and a lesser extent, Toledo.
It's worth pointing out, those of you who've been viewing our channel for a while already know this, but New Jersey is in a very similar situation. We don't have the immediate need of the Sullivans, so our cost is actually pretty close to what you're saying. 8.5, 9.5, 10, something like that for us as well. But we do not have that money to do it, and so we're 10 years overdue from what the Navy says our normal 20-year dry docking period should be. We're already, 10, 11, 12 years overdue in doing that. So, again, it happened to you. It could have been any one of us. If New Jersey was in a place that had a siege and she had dropped on her rudders, I could easily see those popping packings or rupturing along a seam. Because we talk about, oh, she's a destroyer. She's got a 3/8 inch shell plating. It's built in 1943. Right. Well, you know what other ship was built in 1943? The Battleship New Jersey. And we don't have 3/8 shell plating anywhere, but it's as little as 7/16 in some exterior places, so only a little bit thicker than that. And so, for example, North Carolina, built at the same time as our ships, and in the mud part of the time, like not even fully submerged, had leaking in her bow shell plating, even before you guys developed it back here. So there is a definite need for New Jersey as well, and we have not been able to accomplish that either.
These are artifacts that are always wanting to flood, always wanting to leak, right? And the important thing is that with Ryan, the crew from Battleship New Jersey, Hinza, it's a family, and it created, everyone said, how can we support? How can we help? This could happen to any one of us in our ships. And so the support from the Hinza community and just the museum community itself, people who are interested in ships, things like that, really buoyed our spirits. I mean, you guys can imagine how we'd feel, or you'd feel coming in and you see a 35-degree list on your ship. I mean, it was harrowing, it was depressing, and just the support that we got from yourself, other museum ship directors, curators, Hinza as an organization, it was second to none.
And I have to say that that's going both ways because, well, yeah, if I came in and saw my ship listing, I wouldn't even get out of the car. I'd just turn around and go, hey, Phil, I'm sick today. No, but it could have happened to any one of us. Unfortunately, it happened to you. But now you guys are communicating with all of us about what you're doing, what happened, how we will have to respond when this happens to the next ship.
And I'm happy to share, I've shared it a little bit already, but I'm happy to share, any information that you need of how to prepare your staff for this sort of stuff. I'm happy to do that. And lessons learned and the way forward, at least even from a curatorial standpoint with the artifacts. Because you always learn about disasters in school, but you never actually think you'll be someone who actually goes through it. So. But again, can't thank the organization, the Hinza organization enough, the various museum ships around the country, and then just supported the people, and that really gave us the support. So I didn't have to hang my head every day when I would come in. So she's stable. She's out of emergency surgery. She's still in ICU though. So. We got to get her back into a normal hospital room, so to speak, and ready to check out of the hospital, and that's a dry dock.
So we got to raise a little bit more money. We're going to put a link in the description below if you guys would like to donate to support the ongoing restoration efforts on USS The Sullivans, so we can get her fully watertight again and stable for the next 20 years or so until her next dry dock availability.
Yes. Thank you so much. We really appreciate all your support. And again, thanks to Ryan, Battleship New Jersey, and Hinza, and all of the museum ships and all of the ship fans that are out there. Thanks so much.
Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. Again, consider donating at the link below to the USS Sullivans Dry Docking Fund, and also check out the link to the YouTube channel here to get frequent updates from Shane on the progress of the restoration work on the ships here in Buffalo. You can support Battleship New Jersey by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about us and our channel. Thanks for watching.